What did you two know about each other prior to this experience?
I mean, okay, so I did some digging and snooping whenever I got to the hotel and I found out he was doing it. So I told Grayson, the 17-year-old, I was like, guess who's doing it? He freaked out, told me all kinds of stats, we'll go down in history as one of the greatest. So I was like, thank you so much.
Well, for me, I just remember watching the show and remember her as a little girl. And then so she's like, is she old enough to be on the show? And it just was like, you forget how long she's been in the public eye and at such a young age. So I would just, I always go into situations with an open mind. So I was excited to get to know her.
Did you know what you were signing up for?
I saw season 1, and I wish I would have been in warmer environment because that would have been great. Because I got cold and wet, and it was not great.
Tell them why you left the show.
What? Why?
You know why?
Well, I told you I get cold, and my nipples start hurting, and it's done deal. It's a done deal.
What surprised you the most about this experience?
I think the bond that we all had, and because there's people from all walks of life and people who've never met each other, but at the end of the day, this was a challenge, and everybody was rooting for one another. And there was moments where people were on that ledge and wanted to leave the show, and they were like, guys, you didn't know. Come on, man, stay on the show. You inspire me to do this. I'm like, huh? I'm like, and you don't know who's looking at you, yeah. and you inspiring people, and you don't know you inspire them. So I think for me, that was just the bond that you developed with everybody on the show was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely, going into it, I was so shocked at how well everyone connected. It was...
Everybody has said that.
Yeah, it was such a shock to see how well everyone connected. And you just had a great support system. And also, we left there all still communicating, which was awesome.
Yeah. So, how are you doing right now, given everything that's happening with you and your mom and dad?
It's a challenge. This next year is definitely going to be the most challenging, just because I say all the first that you have. You don't really realize their first birthdays and Christmases and whatever it may be is definitely going to be the most challenging, but I have to look at it and be positive and say this isn't the end of the road. There's still fight left, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to make sure that the kids have the best first possible and just start creating new traditions.
How have you been able to keep your sense of hope and joy during this time?
It sounds kind of odd, but I've been able to find a lot of hope and joy in hearing other people's stories because I was extremely tone deaf to our system. It didn't impact me, so I didn't really pay attention to it. And now that it's impacted me, it's opened my eyes to something I should have been open to a long time ago. And to have mothers, daughters, kids, just all these different people reaching out to me and telling me their stories about being in the system or being impacted by the system just gives me a platform to be a voice for other people and to start ruffling some feathers to force some change.
How often are you able to communicate with them?
I talk to both my parents multiple times a day. I go and visit one of them every weekend. So I just switch off weekends, mom one weekend, dad the other. And just to be able to, I look at it and I'm like, you know what? The biggest blessing, I can go, I can hug them, I can talk to them, I can update them on life. So that in itself is the blessing in the midst of the storm.
You've got 2 reality shows. You got a new one you're working on with your siblings and this.
Yes.
How are you juggling both?
Hey, you hustle. I'm a single income household, with 2 kids that are in private school, and you do what you have to do. And I also have my own real estate brokerage firm in Nashville, and that's just doing awesome. So I do whatever I can to make sure life doesn't change.
What are you hoping that people take away from this experience of watching you on the show?
I just think that, that there are always challenges you have in life. And for me, people who know my story, I had a lot of challenges from losing my daughter to going on the show and landing and finding out my father passed where I got there. It's just, are you able to use that to motivate you to do better? And that was the whole reason for me doing this show, to see what I could muster up to push myself through this. And I think for me, it's just, get to see a different side of me, because people only know the basketball side of me, because within this show we had a lot of conversations, cameras were everywhere, so you're going to get to know who I am as an individual outside of basketball.
What did this show teach you about yourself?
That I have a fear of falling. And I think I was able within 3 days I was able to overcome that. And I think for me it's about finding that inner child and talking to the inner child and say, hey, you have this fear, but it's okay. Trust the people around you and trust the system, and that's what I did to myself.
What did you learn about yourself?
Whew, I think I learned that I don't have to be as strong as I portray I am to the world, and it's okay to have weak moments, and it's okay to learn from them, and just to give myself a little bit more credit than maybe I do.
You were talking too, I've heard you talk about grace and the power of grace right now.
For sure. I think we live in such a society right now to where everyone is canceled and someone does something you don't like and we're going to throw you away. But instead, if we take time to hear people's stories and hear why they believe what they believe and why they act the way they act, then maybe we can have a little bit more understanding for the things that someone does. And it's just something we don't do. And I had some conversations, even with Brian Austin Green, like, we look at things politically in different ways, but we sat and had a conversation about it, and he was like, I mean, I understand why you believe that way. And I'm like, oh, well, I understand why you believe the way you believe. And so we had such big conversations that led to growth that I'm like, we need more of that in the world. We need to learn how to disagree respectfully while understand where someone's coming from.